Cenk is not the establishment.
No, I am diehard populist. So how do you tell?
Okay, yeah, how do you tell?
Because look at the policies. I fight for everything that goes to the average guy, okay? So they fight for everything that goes to corporations. Populism used to have a bad connotation across the world. In America, it just now means something really simple. It means what is popular. If you're in favor of things that are popular with the average American person, you're a populist. Nearly everyone else is in politics and media is establishment. They fight tooth and nail against that.
Yeah, so the place I kind of want to move next is somewhere maybe we agree more. I want to kind of discuss from a strategic perspective, as somebody who's largely aligned with the left also. I think in your book, Justice is Coming, the way you talk about the impact of the media often is as mental programming, which in some sense I agree with, in the sense that, you know, people's opinions are naturally funneled through. For example, in the UK, we have GB News. And even though they may be reporting factually, the fact that they're constantly picking up these small stories about immigration or bad behavior from immigrants to a disproportionate amount compared to other news does in some sense programs people's minds. From a strategic perspective, a lot of people will hear that they're being mentally programmed. For example, you're saying that we're trying to call people over from the right to the left, right? And go, well, fuck you, you know, I'm not getting programmed. I'm a free thinker. How can we make sure that we're not shutting people out by telling them they're mentally programmed and therefore making them not receptive? Do you see my question there?
Yeah, I do. So look, that's why I keep saying, and I didn't do this perfectly in the past either. And so, you know, what did I change my mind about recently? And I said there was a lot of examples. One that's more recent is I used to take it on the voters too much, and I'd attack right-wing voters as well. And so they're not all angels, and plenty of them, deserve what I've said. But categorizing all of them that way is definitely a mistake, and a huge number of them are good people that just got the wrong information. So these days, I try to take it out on the leadership. So whether it's political or media leadership. So yeah, they often do this. When I say, hey, mainstream media is doing propaganda, they'll turn it around as if I'm not insulting them, but their viewers. And they'll say, are you saying that our viewers are being brainwashed? And that then triggers people. Oh, what do you mean? But guys, here's what I want everyone to understand. It doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you're in. We all get influenced. We could use neutral words. You could use negative words like brainwashed or manipulated, or you could use a more neutral word like influence. The human mind is enormously open to influence. Think about it. Why does almost everyone believe in the religion they were born into? At 6 months old, 6 years old, 60 years old, did they ever go, wait, let me see now. Should I be a Christian, Muslim, Jew, or Buddhist, or Hindu? Some people have done that, very, very, very small people, right? Number of people. Most people, the overwhelming majority go, the religion I was born into is the right one. Why? Because you got influenced into believing that by your parents, by your church or your mosque or whatever it might be, and you come away thinking, this is definitely right. But you don't know. That was just an influence operation, right? And again, that's and calling it an operation makes it sound evil and nefarious, but this is how you get influence. So what I would ask everyone, again, not just the right, but the left and the middle too, what are you watching? What are you listening to? And I don't just mean media. I also mean your church. I also mean your religious organization. I also mean your parents. I also mean social media. How are they influencing you? What are you believing because they told you to believe it, right? When I did that with my own views, I mean, I dropped almost all the views that I had. I mean, you want to talk about, like, I was a Muslim and I'm now a stone cold atheist. Why? Because I read the Quran. And if you're Christian and you're feeling cocky about that, I also read the Bible. The Bible is even crazier than the Quran. Okay, so I mean, just no one ever reads it. They just hear a priest or an imam or a rabbi tell you the good parts of it. And there are wonderful parts in the Bible, wonderful parts in the Quran. But if you read the whole book, I don't know that a single rational person can stay religious after that. So why is the 70% of the world religious? Because you were influenced in that direction.
Okay, so you're a populist, right?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Categorization. Okay. what I'm understanding is people are influenced and often influenced by corporations, by their upbringing, so on and so forth. And one of the large strands of populism is that there's to some extent, a people, and then there's a them, a corporation, the corporations, right? When Ollie and I were kind of discussing and preparing for this interview, we were struggling a little bit to understand where that line comes. Where is the us and the them kind of separated? How do you divide an elite and a people? Is it kind of socioeconomic? Is it cultural? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's strictly socioeconomic, because you could be a wealthy populist. Not a lot of them, but it's possible, and it's just an ideology, really, more than it is anything that's got to do with your bank account or anything along those lines. But yes, the rich tend to be the establishment more. Why? Because they're in power already. So this is another simple thing that American media doesn't explain to American voters. Why are all the politicians in favor of the status quo? Why did Joe Biden say to his donors, nothing will fundamentally change? Because if you're on top already, you don't want anything to change. Well, you're already at the top. So you love the status quo, and you want to protect the status quo more than anything else. Change is your biggest enemy. Okay? So everyone at the top, that's why it's all good cop, bad cop. That's why the Democratic politicians pretend to be the good cops, the Republicans are the bad cops, MSNBC is the good cop, Fox News is the bad cop, but they're all on the same team. They serve the donor class, they serve corporations, and you could tell in their actions. If you didn't serve corporations, literally every nation on earth, almost every nation on earth, has paid family leave. If you serve corporate rule, then you don't have paid family leave. You don't have minimum wage. You don't have the social safety net, et cetera. So the establishment is people in power in media and politics. And by the way, if you ask them, they would say they're not the establishment. Like if you ask a reporter at the New York Times, a senior reporter at the New York Times, or a senior editor at the New York Times, they would say, of course we're not the establishment. What do you mean?
Are you the establishment?
Yeah, absolutely not. No.
You're not. Cenk is not the establishment.
No, I am
okay.
diehard populist. So how do you tell? Okay,
yeah, how do you tell?
Because look at the policies. I fight for everything that goes to the average guy, okay? So they fight for everything that goes to corporations and the rich. So that $4.5 trillion tax cut that's going to go to overwhelmingly corporations and to the rich is an abomination. It's a great American robbery. We're about to get robbed to the tune of $4.5 trillion. It's going to be one of the largest robberies in world history. So now you can tell who's establishment, ask them about the tax cuts. If they say, oh, yeah, of course, that's eventually it'll get down to the masses. Eventually it'll trickle on them. You know, the rich will, urinate it on top of them and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Laugher curve. Ha ha, we're all laughing. Ha ha ha. Supply side economics. Anyone who tells you that is the establishment. They are the ones who say, no, the rich should get everything, the donors should get everything, and the average American should get nothing. So look, populism used to have a bad connotation across the world. In America, it just now means something really simple. It means what is popular. If you're in favor of things that are popular with the average American person, you're a populist. Nearly everyone else in politics and media is establishment. They fight tooth and nail against that.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting to me, actually, when I came across you for the first time, the fact that you described yourself as a populist, the term, at least in European politics for me, I'm half French, half English, so I've got kind of a foot in both sides. Populist is really negative. It's used against, for example, Marine Le Pen. For example, it's been leveled against Nigel Farage and so on. But you kind of take it as sort of representing the people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know the populists in a lot of places have the connotation of you abuse the public's trust to then go and do what you want, like Donald Trump, right? But no, in the way that we're using it in America, and people often do, I'm not the only one who says this, a lot of people say Trump is a fake populist. He's a Trojan horse. Mm-hmm. He comes in the form of populism. He attacks the press. He attacks the other politicians. Here's when I predicted Donald Trump would win the Republican primary. So Republican primary happens in the beginning of 2016. They start voting in January and February in Iowa, New Hampshire, et cetera. Back in October of 2015, well before the voting began, I said Trump is going to win the Republican primary. Why? One, he was ahead in all the polls. Everybody refused to believe it. Why? They're in the establishment. And they were like, no way this guy who's running as a populist is going to win. Everybody knows that populism is terrible. No, you guys think it's terrible. The American people love it. And then when he was on a debate stage and said, I gave all these guys money and they did whatever I told them to do, I was like, that's it, he's going to win. Okay, because that's so true. And everybody in America knows it's true. And he's the only one saying the one true thing, right? So then he used that as a Trojan horse to then get in and release all the tech bros out of the horse, right? And the Elon Musk and the Peter Thiels. And that's also corporate rule. It's just a different set of corporations. They're the Silicon Valley guys. Now they're running the country. I mean, look at what Trump did. He's the biggest fake populist in the history of populism.
Well, yeah, he's surrounded by billionaires.
Yeah,
right?
he has more billionaires in his cabinet than any other president in history. He gave foreign policy to Miriam Adelson, his third largest donor, and he gave domestic policy to Elon Musk, his largest donor. I mean, it's a joke. The Mellon heir, that's the second largest donor, has to be kicking himself, going, I didn't even get either domestic or foreign policy. Should have asked for more, brother. He'd have given it to you.
Yeah, so very quickly before I let Lukas share his thoughts as well, the one part that's not clear for me about populism that hopefully you can explain is that ultimately you separate into two categories, and it seems somehow like it's aligned by interest. So you have the populist and the establishment, right? Those are the two ends, the people and the elite. Obviously, despite the fact that there is large inequality, American society exists on a gradient. You have Elon Musk, who's the richest man in the world. And then you have people who are struggling to struggling to get a wage together to support themselves, to put food on the table, to have heating. They're working 2 jobs, and then you have a middle class, people in the middle, right? There's a whole gradient. And as you go further up, your interests become more and more aligned with corporate interest. So when you're categorizing so strictly as the people or the elite, or the populist in the establishment, how do you deal with this middle ground? The fact that somebody, for example, who's a middle manager at like a big professional services firm probably will have quite corporate interest, but they won't exactly be the elite either. How do you distinguish two categories so strictly when there's quite a big gradient?
Yeah, no. Look, when it comes to the average citizen, you don't have to delineate that much. And are there crossovers? Like I said in the very beginning, there's definitely crossovers. So, for example, FDR is in the elites. He comes from a very wealthy, connected family. His cousin was already president when he won the presidency, but he ruled like a populist. So he passed Social Security and all these other laws that help the average American rather than helping the rich. In fact, he said about the rich, I welcome their hatred. And he engaged in class warfare against his own class. And in fact, they would call him a class traitor. So, and by the way, look, I'm not in the establishment at all. I fight against the establishment maybe more than anybody in America does. But is it fair to say, wait, Cenk, aren't you in the elites? Depending on how you describe or categorize elites, yeah, that is fair. I went to Wharton Business School. I went to Columbia Law School. Here I am debating at Oxford. Sorry, guys, but I'm going to give a speech at Cambridge next. Okay?
We'll forgive you.
So I get it. But you can be in the elites and still be a populist. So now back to your middle manager. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I want more jobs. And I know corporations create jobs. So maybe a targeted tax cut to keep the steel mill open could be okay, right? So nothing has to be black and white. Everything should be, as long as we're using independent judgment and as long as we have the right intent, which is to help the average person, okay, let's take a look at that policy. Does it help or does it not help?
You think $1 million affects a politician?
Well, not just the politician, anyone who's given that money, right?
Of course.
Right, so you've received that kind of money, and you tell people that they're naive when somebody receives $500,000 and that doesn't impact their interest.
The Supreme Court in America legalized bribery. Almost every politician is an idiot who can't strategize. Every Republican politician is a liar and a crook. If you don't have private health insurance, we just simply let you die.